I'm Tony Lockwood, founder of Thompson Wright Partners, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the latest episode of Inside Track, where I discuss business transformation journeys with leading figures in industry. Today, Nick Churchman is joining me on the virtual sofa. Like many of the people that we have had on earlier episodes, Nick's career has incorporated a number of diverse elements. All of these have naturally influenced how he looks to implement change and transformation. So, without any further delay, let me introduce you to Nick. Hi Nick, thanks for agreeing to join us today. Looking back on your career, it's safe to say that it splits into, well, I think, two distinct elements, a career in the RAF and then an absolute focus on transformation across various sectors and geographies.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a story behind that sort of career. Do you want to start by giving us a brief summary?
Well, thank you, and thanks for asking me to join. So you're absolutely right. I've been lucky enough to have two careers. I did 17 years as an officer in the Royal Air Force. And before you ask, no, I was not a pilot. I was an administration officer, which meant that I did all the things that nobody else wanted to do. Lots of different parts, including being an instructor and learning about leadership and leading programs and learning about change as well. You learn a lot about that in the military. And came to the natural end of a career break, and decided to leave and to dip my toe in the corporate world and see what that was like. So my second career, I've done now 15 years as a consultant and as an interim manager, mostly technology related. I mean, you're right. You said about transformational stuff. It's all been transformational programs, mostly and somehow connected to a technology thing, both in the defence sector, in the education sector, sometime with software businesses, and I've been lucky enough to do that in Australia and in Lisbon as well as in the UK. So, try and go to different places and see different things. So that's been exciting. I'd love to tell you that it's all been carefully planned, but I would be lying.
But that's not uncommon, is it? It's because opportunities create opportunities.
Correct.
And it's that network, isn't it? That especially within, it's just quite a small world. I find transformation, and you build up the network, and you feed off that network.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, network is really important. I also feel like it's a bit like sliding doors, and particularly at the moment, doors will open, and as they rotate round these doors, if they open at the same time, when I went to Australia, I made the decision I wanted to leave. I was with HP at the time. Made the decision to leave HP because I was sort of pretty much fed up with the corporate world and being a consultant there. And as I did so, somebody in my network, somebody I'd worked with before, said, "Well, I've got a job for you in Australia." And when I finished laughing, he said, "No, I'm serious. If you're interested in coming to Sydney, I think you'd be a great fit." So we upped sticks and went to Sydney for 3 years, which was, wow. Yes, wow. I do ask myself, why am I back in the UK on a regular basis? But no, it was a fabulous program as well. A really big, complex program with the New South Wales government.
And did you have to move around quite a lot within the RAF?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I learned my itchy feet, to be frank. Yeah. Whilst I was in the Air Force, I probably moved at least every 2 years, and sometimes on a more regular basis than that. And pretty much every time you're moving into, whilst you're in the same organisation and you're sort of doing the same thing, each job is different. So it's a different location. And I was lucky enough to do 3 years in Germany. I also did 18 months on top of the North Yorkshire Moors and nearly 3 years in the Shetland Islands. So you go, join the Air Force and see the world. Well, I saw the wet and windy and remote parts of the United Kingdom, which was fabulous. I had a great time. Don't get me wrong. But with a family moving all the time like that, you then have to think. But I think I learned that restlessness there, and it's one of the reasons why I like doing the stuff I do now. Is it's if you said to me, please do business as usual job for the next 5-6 years, I'd Yeah. Well, I'd rather lick the road, definitely. Yeah.
But I suspect that's where you know, when the opportunity came to go down to Australia for 3 years, then you know, most people would have gone, "Whoa, can't do that," or sort of taking it through a lens of why it wasn't possible. But yours was probably through a lens of, well, it's just another move. And
it's just another move. And we as a family, and I have 2 daughters, we as a family said, look, you know, let's treat it like another RAF posting, and if it works, then we'll stay, and if it doesn't work or we need to change it, then we change it. You know, it's not.
And Shetland against Sydney.
yeah, they're exactly the same. The water's the same colour. That's about the only thing you can say.
Okay, so obviously within the RAF, change focus type of roles, certainly in the latter part of that career. Then into HP, and like you say, sort of much more around sort of infrastructure development in focus change, and then through into sort of general change. Which have you enjoyed the most? Or have you enjoyed it all the time?
Well, you know, I mean, I think on a day-to-day basis, you go through, I'm enjoying this, I'm not enjoying this, I'm enjoying this, I'm not enjoying this. And on the whole, I love what I do. I mean, I love the fact that I work with an organisation, or indeed a group of people, or even just a team, in order to be able to help them change. And I love that. The learning that I get from them, the experience that in some cases I can pass on to other people. So I love it. I mean, the bits that I like the most is where you can combine a cultural change element with a tangible, practical project program that is delivering some sort of benefit. I think we don't do enough working out what the benefits are, but where it is not just about cut costs, change infrastructure, change ERP, but you've then got some underpinning need to make more than just training changes.
Yeah.
So you know, if you look at a change program and you go, we've got a new tool that we want to use, and we need to be able to train people how to use that tool and tell them, you know, the reasons why we're doing it. That's a change program. Transformational, I feel, makes it much more when you are you're actually changing the what and the why, much more the why people are doing things, and you've got to get a bit more hearts and mind. And you know, best place for that, definitely in HP. With the work we were doing in HP, I was with on the Defence Information Infrastructure project, which is, if anybody of your listeners know, at the time was about £10 billion program with the UK government, or at the UK Ministry of Defence, to put a new IT infrastructure in every location across all the security levels across the Ministry of Defence. So an enormous, great program over 10 years, but with 5 companies involved, right, who are not natural bedfellows. They were all competitors.
Yeah.
So what we had to do inside this bubble was get competitors to work together more effectively to get the sum of their parts out of them, which meant we had to do a lot of changing the way people were working and not using any one particular way of working, which was fantastic. And a lot of that was to do with leadership development. You know, it was a lot of that was about you know, 1 or 2 people in the organization couldn't do it on their own, so you have to build a coalition of change agents, champions, whatever phrase you want to do it.
Yeah.
And the best place for that often is the leadership team. And leaders don't always have the skill sets in order to be able to do that sort of thing. So you've got to help them do that. And that was just such a joy to do.
It's interesting. I've worked in a number of organisations, and my role has been to work for the company, facing off to the big 4 and the big sort of IT companies.
Yeah.
And a couple of times the brief has been as simple as keep them honest. The frustration around what you've just been saying about a number of these competitors being forced to work together because the organisation has said that's reality. the frustration of seeing people almost working against each other in a program was quite evident. But it'd be interesting just to get your view on the other side of how you felt working in that environment where you were, like you say, getting into bed with people that weren't your natural bedfellows.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, whether you're talking about a change program or whether you're talking about a consortium, as this was in Australia, in HP Defence, you have to understand. You have to get to the point where everybody understands what we're trying to achieve together. So yes, there are vested interests, and if you think about it, boil it down a little bit. Really, what you're talking about is vested interests. Absolutely. And really, therefore, what you're talking about is managing stakeholders. And really, you just got to, when you think about it on that level, then you go back to the basic principles. What do you do when you've got a bunch of complicated stakeholders? Australia was even more complicated. Government, unions, teachers, administrators, etc. What have you got to be able to do? Well, you've got to take the story that you're telling as a whole and be able to translate that so that the person who's listening, the vested interested who's listening, sees what the value of it is to them.
Yeah.
And in HP, that's exactly what we had to do. Why are we doing this? Well, we as individual companies have all signed up to join this program because it is a good financial decision. What is going wrong right now? Well, we're working against each other because each one says, well, it's not invented here and my way is slightly better. And So what do we need to do in order to be able to make that better is just change things, do things differently here, and then tie that back to the original reason for being there, which was we're here to make money. So if we can just connect those two things, it sounds simple. It took a long time, months, years to get to it effectively. But if you can link those two things, why you're doing it and what it is, those makes it much more simple to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my experience, doing exactly that, really getting people in a room and just saying, okay, doors are closed. Let's get the issues out on the table because we're not leaving here until we come to some common understanding of what we're all going to do and how we're going to work together.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, it was at one stage in this experience with HP. My particular role was about consortium relations, and bizarrely, I worked for the commercial director. And the commercial director, and when we started this, the commercial director said, "I need somebody who's, if you like, almost a mediator before it gets to me." Yeah. So I want somebody who can put people in a room, as you've just said, shut the door and say, right, this is a safe space. Let's just get it all out on the table. I am not a commercial person. I'm not about to write you a contract breach notice or anything like that. Let's work it out here before we get to anything in a commercial terms. And that actually ended up being quite effective.
Good. Something you picked up on, or you mentioned earlier, around sort of benefits and the fact that all too often they're not focused as much as some of the other aspects of change. I think transformation should always deliver significant value. It's part of the definition of transformation, I suspect. But I think you're right. I find that a lot of organisations don't focus as much time and effort upon clarifying what those benefits should be. And even when they do that, not focusing upon realising those benefits and tracking those benefits. What's been your experience?
I completely agree with you. In fact, it's like a running sore across, and I confess I'm probably as bad as many people in this industry. We bemoan as an industry that our change programs fail, and they fail on a regular basis. My opinion is they fail because we're not sure about what we're doing, what's the scope of it is, and what we're attempting to achieve. And we're not sure about what we're attempting to achieve because we don't spend long enough thinking about what those benefits are. And if we spend as much time managing the benefit stream, the realization of those benefits and attaching those to individuals in the organization, as we do about worrying about whether we've met a particular milestone or delivered an output at a particular point in time, then I think we would do much better. Now, I know on the programs that I've worked on, the ones that have worked well, we've had a benefit stream. The ones that have not worked well, the ones where I've not, for all sorts of reasons, we've lost focus on those benefits. We've lost focus on what the outcomes are going to be. Or when the program has been started, benefits have been politicized.
Yeah.
In order to be able to convince a board or a CFO or the decision maker that we're going to do X, then we make big promises about the hard cash benefits and don't talk about the harder, the soft intangibles. Very difficult to identify how those are going to go through. Even more difficult to prove the effect, isn't it? Rather than a major program, talk about the cost of running a leadership development project in an organization. So show me the financial benefit of this. Yeah. Prove the financial benefit of this.
Yeah, I think that sort of value stream and that attaching the benefits to individuals is where I've seen most success. I suppose two things. One, and I come back to a comment made by Christoph in the first episode of this podcast, where he talks about focusing on outcomes rather than outputs, and all too often benefits are attached to an output as opposed to an overall outcome. And we get caught up in delivering these outputs, which then stops us from delivering the outcomes. But certainly in a couple of major programs I've been involved in over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, where we've been able to attribute and attach those outcomes to individuals, ideally individuals at a senior level, if not the individuals, certainly at a departmental level. I think it's down to that accountability. They take ownership and they're much more engaged because it's focused upon them as opposed to focusing upon this program to deliver it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. The other thing I would add to it is, and I think I learnt this when I was in HP, was the old adage is what gets measured gets done. Okay, so transformational programs, or even just change programs, if we accept the difference between the two of them, are a bit like trying to change the engines of an aircraft mid-flight, aren't they? So you've got the business, you've got the normal thing, they've got to make a profit, they've got to continue doing what they do and at the same time you're making some change. I found, in particular in HP, that what we were doing was measuring business unit leaders on their normal outputs.
Yeah.
Okay, but we weren't clever enough at that time to add the change outcomes to their objectives, if you like, to their incentive pile, and therefore, and this varies between departments, and so therefore, when pressure is on, individuals revert to the things which they are measured on, rather than the things which they're not. And if they're things they're not are in the transformation program, then that gets afforded less priority. I think the other thing is how do you? It's okay if you can point to a pound sign. In those benefits, and again, those projects that say we will increase revenue by X or we'll reduce cost by Y, that's okay. It is more simple to be able to add those objectives to an individual, and again, in HP we did that. Where it's more intangible, that's much more challenging.
Yeah, but you still need to, it's like anything, isn't it? It's those smart objectives again, isn't it? You still need to be able to measure. Yeah. That doesn't have to be pensions and pence, but you have to be thinking about how you're going to measure the impact of the actions that you take.
Yeah.
And
So
be clear about those up front.
correct. And where we got to in HP was we were measuring employee engagement index. Okay, so morale was low. One of the consequences of this, fighting amongst the consortium was morale was low. So we said, well, look, we'll measure the employee engagement index. And watch that improve over the course of a number of years, and said, thank you very much. That therefore the things that we are doing are improving the way people feel. So, so I agree with you.
Interesting. Okay, changes are constant, as we know, and never more than what we're living through at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think coming out of it, what we're finding talking to organisations is that there's a lot of change and a lot of technology-driven change that has been almost shelved for the past 12, 18 months because of Brexit and then the election.
Yeah.
We're taking a step back now just to say, well, is that still relevant, and is that still, in terms of new normality, does that still fit? And I think a lot of it will still be relevant, and because market conditions are changing, new technologies are disrupting stuff. So I think in the latter part of the year and into 2021, the amount of transformation programs that we're seeing will grow exponentially, and then there'll be a pressure on delivering stuff, as you say, and I think it'd be interesting just to get your view about how and what you do to sort of create those sort of right conditions, and how you start to build that momentum up within an organisation so that the transformation piece at least starts to go in the right direction.
Yeah. I think, I agree with your hypothesis that I think there's a bow wave of change that's going to come through organizations. Now, whether that's, because they're going to have to change the business model, or because they're taking an opportunity to do something, or, they're having to claw their way out of no revenue for 6-9 months of the year. I agree with that. I don't think the conditions of what you do with a change program or any project have changed in any of that.
No, I agree.
So I would go back to the military and ex-military are very fond of acronyms. So there's the P principle. Prior planning prevents poor performance. There is an extra P in there, but I wouldn't use it. So by which I mean, as an interim, or as a transformation director, or as a CEO, or as chief operating officer, looking at what your change program is, the best ones I've seen have always been where you spend a lot of time thinking about what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. The how is almost, it's not irrelevant, is much less relevant. If you don't work those bits out, then nothing else is going to work effectively.
Yeah.
And I hope that organizations, as we go forward, don't feel they're pushed into jumping too fast into actually doing the transformational piece, doing the mechanics, making changes to the structure, or putting a new software in. I don't know how many times have you heard people saying, yeah, we've picked a new IT system, and now we need to work out what we're going to do with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm not sure, to the question you're asking, I'm not sure that the way that we get ready for it is any different now than it was last year before, or when I started doing this, or.
No, I agree. I suppose the question wasn't necessarily as it changed. It's just there's going to be, as you say, that bow wave of initiatives, programs coming through. So, what lessons do you have for organisations who are maybe trying to manage all of this at the same time, maybe with a slightly reduced staff because of furlough or redundancies and such like, and getting that balance, I suppose, coming back to what we were talking about earlier. The sort of one of the challenges I find is that responsibilities for transformation is often overlaid onto the business as usual type of activity as well. So
Yep.
when you work out from a resource management perspective,
Yeah.
how much time these people are committing, then suddenly you get that they're at 150% of capacity
Committed.
or 200% capacity.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's what, what are we going to start, what are we going to stop, and what are we going to change in order to be able to do stuff? It gets lost all the time.
It is very much, as you've just said, it is about just stepping back and really thinking about the why that we're doing
Yeah.
it, and then being clear about what it is that what outcomes we're looking to achieve, and then being clear about the how we're going to do it. Absolutely.
I think there's another thing though. You have to be able to say, you've got to be able to assess. I have the sense that you've got to be able to assess how much of this change do I need to do now. How much do I need to be able to adjust, perhaps tweak my business in order to be able to keep going through, and recognizing that we can't, that we need to avoid biting off more than we can chew. I mean, that's all a bit sort of Janet and John, if you like. But I think we do. I have often find that we forget we forget the obvious, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
And particularly when you're in the middle of something, and maybe that's where the advantage of having somebody who isn't in the organisation, who can look at it from the outside, that can say, well, here are a few of the key points, not how you're going to fix it, but here are a few of the key points. And also be able to say, okay, in order to be able to have the capacity to do those key points, there's a combination of people that you bring in to help you, that surge capacity, but also what are you going to stop doing? What are you going to take away from people? What are you going to relax on in order to be able to do to manage stuff at any one particular time? But
it's also I think, a little bit about having that roadmap as well, isn't it? Of as you say, once you've reviewed the options that you have, you don't, as you said earlier, you don't have to do everything now.
No.
Have a sequential roadmap that makes sense, that it's actually taking you towards where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's not COVID related per se, but I spent the whole of 2019 in Lisbon with a company who make the biometric software, the passport readers that you get at border controls, and in various other places. A relatively small company wanting to be a very big company, and knew that they had a lot of change that had to be done over, and recognized that it was going to be 2 years, 3 years before they could claim full success. But to the point you just made, they sat at the beginning, and I was part of the team that helped put that together. Sat at the beginning and said, this is what we want to do, and this is why we want to do it, our aims, and if you like, the underpinning incentive for doing it, and then worked out the 18-month program of the things that we were going to do in the order in which they were going to do them. So that was the plan itself. Now, plans flex. If they're good plans, they can flex as long as you're doing that with your eyes open. So things changed, and we did, some things delivered on time, some things were a bit early, other things ended up being a bit late, inevitably. But it was we weren't trying to do absolutely everything to the organization that was required to get it to where they wanted to be in the first 6 months or in the first 12 months. It took much longer than that over a period of time. So I think that principle that you just said, I've seen work very effectively, and I don't see why it would be any different in the future.
No, I agree. And I think there's definitely a case for having that independent view. And it doesn't need to be an external independent view. It can be an internal independent review, but someone who's almost putting the mirror up against and saying, okay, let's just be clear about why we're doing this, what we're doing, and then how we're going to do it in sequentially, and making sure that we've got that clarity. And something that was brought up on an earlier episode with Dan, having that sort of one-page overview of what it is that we're trying to do. Because once we've got it on one page, we can really start to be clear in terms of the engagement and the communication.
I think that independent view is really important all the way through a program as well. In Australia, so what we were doing in Australia was a learning management business reform program for the New South Wales government. So new education system, new finance system, and although I wasn't part of it, also a new HR system for 2,500 schools and 10 further education colleges. Quite a big thing. New South Wales government, lots of independent contractors, Accenture as the SI. And interestingly, what the government had done was put KPMG in as a critical friend.
Right.
So as I was the portfolio director, so overall responsibility for delivery of the project, the programs. I had an open and ongoing engagement with a KPMG partner who came in and said, have you thought about X? So not in the reporting chain or the hierarchy, had an external independent view, was only incentivized for the quality of the advice they gave rather than anything else, who could stop and hold a mirror to me and say, we have heard, what about such and such? And also, lots of access to other people. And I thought it was a really, really fabulous sounding board, venting system, but also just a sanity check, because everybody from the minister down through the organization was utterly focused on getting done. But this individual and that function just was not involved in the day-to-day delivery, but just stopped and looked on one side. And that's a big program, and you have the capacity to do that. But the independence that you said, I think, was probably the most valuable thing I had out there.
But it's exactly what you've just said, isn't it? It's that you tend to get very blinkered and very focused upon the world that you're living in terms of delivering this project or this program, and have to be focused like that in many cases. But every now and again, you just need to get your head up and see the sky and say, actually, are we still going down the right road? And is this destination still the right destination?
And I think if you step back from that was inside the project or inside the delivery. If you do that at the start of when you're planning, then my hypothesis is you've got a good, better chance of success. So you work out what you're trying to do, why you're going to do it, come together with your one pager, as it were, and then stop and say to other people around the organization or whatever, and say, is this right? Does this make sense? And then go and work out the details of what the plan looks like. That would be how I would approach it, at least.
So you come across as a bit of a chilled out guy, but obviously during transformation programs, it's pretty stressful, and those stress levels can get quite high. What do you do to sort of alleviate that stress?
Well, the best thing that I found has been yoga.
Right.
I was lucky enough to start practicing yoga just before I went to Australia, and then in Australia, Sydney is a fabulous place to do it. The weather's fantastic, but also the number of places in which you can do it is much better than if you're living in the remote part of the United Kingdom or whatever. So that helps both at a physical level, but also at a mental level. And I'm a bit of a evangelist for getting men of a certain age who spend too much time behind desks to move, and I think it's very effective. That's been a great help. And I also hike and wild camp. So and I like doing that on my own, because of course we spend all day wrapped around lots and lots of people and inside lots of inputs, and the phone's going and the emails going, and lots of people wanting to talk to you. So hiking on my own or wild camping outside is fantastic.
I ask this question a lot, and I think although people have different ways of relieving that stress, the commonality of it all is to give yourself some space and some time just to collect your thoughts.
Yeah.
So some people cycle, some people run, some people do yoga and meditate and stuff.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it's all about just giving yourself some space.
Something break away. And I mean, on a personal level, I know that in earlier years in my career, I didn't do that. It took, I had to learn it the hard way.
Final question from myself. If there's one thing that you would say, actually, if I don't do anything else, this is the one thing I take into every program. What is that? What's the one takeaway?
You're only allowed one.
Well, some people have taken liberties before and done 2 or 3, but I prefer one.
I think that in every place I have been, I've tried to work out the 3 things that is about. And if I can't say it in 3 things, if I can't explain generally what and why in 3 statements, then it's too complicated.
Right.
So I have to do that on a personal basis, because if it's more than 3 things, personally, I probably can't remember them. It's probably too complicated for me to understand. So if I can boil it and cut all the noise away and bring it down to 3 simple things that I can say to everybody, and I just consistently repeat it.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, and I've had it a couple of times, is those things start to come back to you from other parts of the organization.
Yeah.
You hear other people saying those same 3 things, and you go, okay, all right, we're getting something done here, and actually, we all agree. And if you can get everybody doing it through the organization, it makes it a lot easier. Keep it simple.
I was going to say it's the KISS principle, isn't it? It's
absolutely.
Keep it simple.
My background in the Air Force gives me too many acronyms and too many expressions like that, so I have to try not to do it. But you're absolutely right. Keep it simple, stupid, and make it 3 things.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks a lot once again, Nick, and speak to you soon.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Well, that's another great episode in the can. Please do let me know if you have any questions that I can put to Nick, or indeed any of the other participants in the earlier episodes. We are really excited to be launching the Transformation Leaders Hub, a true peer-to-peer network. The aim is to provide guidance to people that work in transformation, helping them to maximise their careers. So please do click on the link in the show notes below and sign up today. See you soon.